Hello and welcome to Scientific Games technical training video on doing a TwinStar 3 REM to TwinStar 5 REM conversion. Before starting, let us identify the required tools needed to perform this task. 1. You will need a 7 millimeter nut driver. You will need a number 1 Phillips head screwdriver. You will also need a number 2 Phillips head screwdriver. And lastly, a flathead screwdriver. To start, verify the inventory has the following: a main door, the reel mechanism, reel strips, reel basket, 10-inch grounding strap, right side end mount, which is a shelf, lower bar assembly, your 5-reel shelf assembly, cable shield, upper crossbar, and lastly, hardware. For this conversion, we will remove the following in this order, starting with the reel housing and reel strips. Next, we will remove the main door. Then we will proceed to remove the top monitor. Next, we will remove the lower bar assembly. Then we'll remove the right side end mount. And lastly, we'll remove the upper crossbar. Okay, now that everything has been identified, we are ready to start the conversion. It's important to note the process shown for the removal could vary, but this is the best practice found overall. This process requires one person and could take up to 2 hours to complete. Start by opening the main door and then turn the power off to the cabinet. Use your number 2 Phillips head screwdriver. Loosen the 2 thumb screws on the left reel. Now we can disconnect the reel connector. Remove the reel and set to the side. Repeat this process for the remaining 2 reels. Once this is completed, we can now move to remove the main door. With the main door open, using your flathead screwdriver, place on the retaining tab for the gas strut. Lift slightly and place gas strut inside of the cabinet to prevent it from being damaged. Next, disconnect the USB cable, power cable, the display cable, and LED control board from the door display. Inside the EGM, you will need to disconnect the LCU cable that is coming from the main door. You will also need to disconnect the power cable inside the EGM that is also a part of this harness. Using a 7 millimeter nut driver, we will need to disconnect the grounding cable. You will only need to remove the end that is inside of the EGM. Grasp the monitor so that you are able to lift it. As a suggestion, ensure the door is at 90 degrees of the machine. Lift up and out and place in a safe location. Next, we will remove the top monitor. Just like all TwinStar toppers, push the upper monitor release latch, yellow as shown here. Hold the monitor firmly on each side and lift the monitor up to remove it. Situate the monitor to allow you to disconnect the DP, the power, the LED cable, the grounding cable, and touchscreen cable from the back of the monitor. Again, place this in a safe location for later use. We are now ready to remove the lower shelf and the upper crossbar. Before doing this, disconnect the cables from the RCU board as shown here. Starting with the lower shelf, on the right side of the cabinet, use your number 2 Phillips screwdriver. Remove the 3 screws as shown here. Place in a safe location. We can reuse them for the new shelf that is going to be installed. Moving to the left side of the cabinet, we can now remove the lower shelf. Disconnect from the audio board the 2 USB cables at the bottom and pull through the opening of the shelf. From here, you will see 3 nuts that we will need to remove. Using your 7mm nut driver, remove these nuts as shown here and set aside so that we can use them later. Lift up on this shelf from the right and pull shelf out. Now we can do the same for the right side and remove the 3 7mm nuts that secure it to the cabinet. Place these to the side as we did with the others for later. Lastly, we need to remove the upper bar. The top monitor was removed to allow for better access. You will need your 7mm nut driver as we did with the other nuts. Remove these and set aside for usage later. Set this with the other equipment you removed for the 3-reel conversion. You will need to complete an RMA for all the equipment removed for this conversion. Now, performing the verse of the removal of the 3 REM, we can now start on the 5 REM conversion. I suggest, but it is a preference, assemble your reel housing before starting on the actual installation. Before we do this, I want to point out a few things that are different between the 3 REM and the 5 REM. Notice as I am showing here, the reel mechanism has a pin that has a head on it. When inserting it into the upper bar, you will insert into the hole and then pull down. This will lock the top of the reel mechanism in place. Starting with the upper bar, using the 6 7mm nuts removed earlier, secure it back into place. Ensure you have the correct orientation when mounting this in place. Next, we want to install the right side mounting bracket. Again, you will need 3 7mm nuts to secure it in place. Secure this bracket into place before proceeding to the next step. Now we can install the lower shelf. At this point, there should not be any cables connected to the audio board. Place the lower shelf in place. Using 3 7mm nuts, secure this to the left side of the cabinet. Almost there. Now we will secure this shelf to the right side mounting bracket. Using your number 2 Phillips tip screwdriver and 3 screws, secure these together as shown here. From here, we can now connect the USB cable, disconnected earlier from the audio board. Connect the cables from the new shelf to the RCU board. Next, we will install the cable shield. As shown, it has two standoffs and on the shelf, two holes. We will insert the cable shield into these holes. Note, this prevents cables from the door to not get pinched. You will need two 7mm nuts and your nut driver to secure in place. Lay monitor so that you have the ability to connect the power, the DP, your USB touch, the LED, and grounding cable. When mounting the monitor, ensure that when putting it in place, ensure no wires are pinched and free to move around. Lift monitor into place so that it is secure. Now we can mount the main door. In your new kit, pick and mount the new monitor to the EGM. From here, connect the gas strut and connect the harness coming from the door to the LED control board mounted inside the EGM. Also, connect the power to an available 4-pin Molex that will most likely be the one that was used when removing the main door for the 3-reel. Now connect the USB touchscreen. The power, LED, and the DP cable to the monitor for the main door. Next, we will need to attach the new grounding cable. As shown here, I used an available standoff on the door and then did the same for inside the EGM. Secure into place using your 7mm nut driver. Lastly, we need to assemble our reel housing. In the photos I have, you will see a black dot. This indicates the 2 zeros for where the strip will start. Also for the basket, you will see an arrow indicator on the reel mechanism. This indicates the 0 line for the basket. Orient the reel strip properly on the basket and then secure the reel mechanism. Repeat this process until all 5 reel baskets have been assembled and mounted to the reel mechanism. Note, when placing strips on the basket, ensure to place the proper reel strip in the proper order when mounting in the EGM. This is very important, and if not installed properly, your reel strip test will not be correct. Once completed, we can now install the reel assembly into the EGM. As stated and shown earlier, place reel strip number 1 into position 1 and repeat this for all the others. Secure each assembly into place. We are now ready to install the software. Place your install thumb drive into your CPU. Power on EGM. Allow thumb drive to be established. From here, out your machine to customer specifications. Once all software has been installed, you will need to perform and verify the reel strip test. Thank you for taking the time to review this material. Visit our SG Learn site for any documentation needed to assist with this conversion.